Chag Sameach, friends, Moadim L'Simcha. Our San Antonio Jewish Community Seder, will be held in virtual fashion, a model Seder, if you will, during this period of COVID-19 and the policies instituted worldwide for social distancing. We hope you will find it nonetheless a meaningful experience. What is Passover all about? Let us turn to page 1 in our beautiful Haggadah prepared by our JCC staff, as we will be using this Haggadah, this order of the Seder tonight. On page 1, Passover, or Pesach, begins on the 15th day of the Jewish month of Nisan. It is the first of 3 major festivals with both historical and agricultural significance, like Shavuot and Sukkot. It represents the beginning of the harvest season in Israel. The primary observances of Pesach are related to the exodus from Egypt after generations of slavery. The name Pesach comes from the Hebrew meaning to pass through, or to pass over, to exempt, or to spare. It refers to the fact that God, quote, passed over, unquote, the houses of Israelites when he was slaying the firstborn sons of the people of ancient Egypt. In English, the holiday, of course, is known as Passover. Probably the most significant observance related to Pesach involves the removal of chametz, that is leaven or yeast, from our homes, and even puffery and pride from our lives. This commemorates the fact that the Jews leaving Egypt were in such a hurry and did not have time to let their bread rise. Chametz includes anything from the 5 major grains: wheat, rye, barley, oats, and spelt. The grain product we do eat during Pesach is called matzah. Matzah is the unleavened bread made simply from flour and water and cooked very quickly. On the first night of Pesach, we have a special meal filled with ritual to remind us of the significance of this holy day. This meal is called Seder. The word Seder means order, that all the commandments and rituals of this evening are to be performed in a specific order. There are 15 parts to the Seder, and you might recall them traditionally by a beautiful Babylonian Talmudic melody that helps me remember the 15 parts of the Seder. Kadesh urechatz, kaharpas yachatz, magid rachatza, mohotzi mahatza, maror korech, shulchan orech, tzafun barech, Hallel Nirtzah. Kadesh, the recitation of Kiddush. Urchatz, the washing of the hands. Karpas, eating a vegetable dipped in salt water. Yachatz, the breaking of the middle matzah. Magid, the recitation of the story of the Exodus. Rachatzah, the washing of the hands. Motzi, the recitation of the blessing Hamotzi. Matzah, the recitation of the blessing Al Achilat Matzah, eating the matzah. Maror, eating the bitter herbs. Korech, eating a sandwich of matzah and bitter herbs. Shulchan Orech, eating the festive meal. Tzafun, eating the afikoman. Berach, the recitation of grace and thankfulness for the meal. Hallel, the recitation of Hallel psalms of praise. And finally, Nirtzah, our prayer that God accepts our humble service. On page 2, let's take a look of the Passover Seder plate. The Passover Seder plate is a special plate containing symbolic foods that we use during the Passover Seder. Each of the 6 items arranged on the plate has a special significance to the retelling of the story of Exodus from Egypt. The 7th symbolic item used during the meal, a stack of 3 matzahs, of 3 matzot, placed on its own plate on the Seder table. Now we're going to be discussing the 6 traditional items on the Seder plate over the generations. As in the past, other items have been included on the Seder plate, but we're going to stick for this purpose this evening to the 6 traditional items on our Seder plate. Maror, the bitter herbs, symbolizing the bitterness and harshness of the slavery with which the Jews endured in Egypt. Charoset, a sweet brown mixture of nuts, apples, and wine, representing the mortar, used by Jewish slaves to build the storehouses of Egypt. Karpas, a vegetable other than bitter herbs, which is representative of life and its new beginnings. Zroa, a roasted lamb, goat, shank bone, a chicken wing, a chicken neck. It serves to us as a visual reminder of the Pesach sacrifice, which in ancient days was a lamb that was offered in the temple in Jerusalem, then roasted and eaten as a part of the meal on Seder night. Beitzah, a roasted egg, symbolizing the Korban Chagiga, the festival sacrifice that was offered in the temple in Jerusalem and roasted and eaten as part of the meal on Seder night. The Chazeret. Some rabbinic scholars noticed that the phrase bitter herbs was plural and interpreted that to mean that there should be 2 different kinds of bitter vegetables on the Seder plate. Won't you join me if you have our JCC Haggadah on page 3? Before we start the Seder, as we do on Shabbat and festivals, we kindle the lights pertinent to the evening. This beautiful reading on the bottom of page 3. The evening shadows lengthen. We prepare ourselves to light the holiday candles. In this act, we unite and identify ourselves in time and space with all Jews in other periods and places of our history. As we foster the beauty and uniqueness of our own heritage, so we too support those who further the beauty and uniqueness of their respective traditions. We unite with other Jews and with all who act so that people around the world can live in peace and freedom and develop so they can reap the fruits of their lives as human beings. May these candles lighted on this festival of freedom bring light into our hearts and minds. May they renew our courage to act for justice and freedom in our time and wherever we may be. May they illumine the path to truth, justice, and peace. Of course, our lights have been pre-kindled for this service, but now we pronounce the blessing upon them. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Yom Tov. Blessed are you, eternal our God, sovereign of the universe, who has sanctified us with commandments and commanded us to light the festival lights. Amen. We add an additional blessing, the Shehecheyanu. This blessing encourages us to offer thanks for significant and timely experiences. It is typically recited at the beginning of holy days and to celebrate special occasions such as this. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shehecheyanu v'kiyemanu v'higiyanu lazeman hazeh. Blessed are you, the eternal, our God, sovereign of the universe, who has kept us alive, sustained us, and enabled us to reach this season. How wonderful it is that even through this medium, we live and celebrate together in harmony. Let's sing in the middle of page 4. Hine ma tov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. Next year, friends, in person, please God. Amen. On page 4, the Kadesh, the first cup of wine, also known as the cup of sanctification. The Torah uses different words and phrases to express the divine promises of freedom for our people. These may represent different stages of redemption. We can also read these promises as toasts to the generations of our people who committed themselves to the struggle for liberation in their own day. Like wine, we can appreciate freedom as a gift to use wisely and with respect. On page 5, over the course of the Seder, we will drink from 4 cups of wine to recall each time freedom was promised. Many patterns of 4 appear in our telling tonight. This is the first of them. The first promise states, I am God, and I will free you from the burden of the Egyptians. This first stage of redemption and this first cup of wine we dedicate to the people of the Exodus. We raise our Kiddush cups and proclaim the holiness of this day of freedom. Now you will have an excerpt, that is, of the Kiddush on page 5. I would like to chant the original Hebrew in the complete benediction. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'am, veromemanu mikol ha'shon, v'kiddushanu b'mitzvotav. V'titen lanu Adonai Eloheinu v'hava, moadim lesimcha, חגים וזמנים לששון, את יום חג המצות הזה, זמן חירותנו, מקרא הקודש, זכר יציאת מצרים, כי בנו בחרת, ואותנו קידשת, מכל העמים, מכל העמים, מועדי קודשך בשמחה ובששון, הנחלתנו, ברוך אתה אדוני, מקדש ישראל, ישראל והזמנים, מקדש ישראל, ישראל והזמנים. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה. לחיים, to life. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, eternal of the universe, who creates the fruit of the vine. Blessed art thou, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who has sanctified us through his commandments, kept us in life and health, sustained us, enabling us to reach this season. Amen. How important that benediction is for all of us today. The first act, according to ancient practice, our hands are to be washed. How CDC of us. Before food is dipped into the liquid, this is the next step in the ritual, so the rabbis do not require a blessing at this time. And the thought was perhaps because we're going to be handling different types of food and passing about to our fellow and sister at the table. And so in order to discern cleanliness, E flat major, We simply wash the hands, towel dry them, and some of us may even prefer to shoot a little Perel on our hands before we handle the food. The first act then, being complete, we eat the karpas. Even before the exodus from Egypt, our ancestors probably celebrated the mystery of life and the creation of the world each spring. Now again, we remind ourselves of the greens of the earth and the salt of the sea from which all life emerged and upon which all life depends. But we do not simply celebrate spring's renewal or love's warmth. Pesach celebrates our becoming free in mind and heart and body. Through the wondrous rebirth of life, we can feel the precarious beginnings of the struggle for freedom. The sea's salt not only reminds us of life's start, but also of the brine of tears shed by our people and by all peoples striving to be free. Spring is the season of rebirth and renewal. So now take your parsley or your green vegetable, dip them into salt water, and then distribute them, after you wash your hands, to all members of your Seder table. We recite together, Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Borei Peri HaAdamah. Blessed are you, the eternal, our God, sovereign of the universe, who has created the fruit of the earth. And now in the middle of page 6, we have the yachatz, the breaking of the middle matzah. There are 3 matzot on the Seder table. We now break the middle one into 2 pieces. We leave the smaller piece and wrap the larger in a napkin to be used sometime during the service. That is, it'll be hidden at some time in the service and then redeemed before dessert is served. So I'm going to follow instructions. I really miss the kids at this point because they are on point from the moment that this magic matzah, usually handed to Betsy Cowan, who has a genius for this sort of thing, and unless I can cyber it to her at this moment, it's going to be somewhere in this universe. It may be there, it may be elsewhere. Keep your eye on the middle matzah. This piece of matzah is now called the afikoman, and it must be found and reunited with other matzot and eaten right after dinner, or the Seder cannot proceed to its conclusion. Now in the middle of page 6, the Magid, we tell the story of the Exodus. As we hold up our Seder plate, that is our plate of matzah, we recite, "This is the bread of affliction, the lechem oni, the bread of poverty our ancestors ate in Egypt. Let all who are hungry come and eat. Let all who are slaves to their desires share the message of Passover. While we celebrate here, we join with our people everywhere. Tonight we celebrate virtually here, next year as community, God willing, in the land of Israel. Now we feel all our bonds next year. May we all be free." How poignant and how relevant for today. Let us all who wish to explore the meaning of slavery and its consequences, and all who hunger to assert their spiritual freedom, join us in the observance of the festival of Matzah. Let all who are hungry enter and eat. As never before, we now know many are hungry here at home, in our own communities, and around the world. A trip to HEB should confirm that for all of us. The poor are not helped by our words, no matter how compelling, only by our action. And thank God for the nurses, the doctors, the first responders, and those who provide the basic sustenance upon which we all depend. On page 7, friends, we talk about 4 different personalities. In this case, 4 children. We refer to ourselves as children of God, no matter how old we are. We are still children in that sense. On page 7, while most people are familiar with the Haggadah's 4 questions, the Manish Tanah that we'll sing in a moment, a lesser known 4 in the Haggadah is the 4 children. 4 times the Torah builds us to tell our children of the exodus from Egypt. 4 times the Torah repeats, "And you shall tell your child on that day." From this, our tradition infers that there are 4 different kinds of people. Notice the similarity to Sukkot, to the Lulav, and to the Etrog. Each child asks a question regarding the meaning of Passover Seder. But each child in our narrative asks is unique to his or her own individual personality and intellect, as are the answers she or he must be given. These 4 personalities can ultimately serve as a model for how we educate our children and ourselves. We see each of these around us and indeed within us. To each we respond in a different manner, according to his or her question, their situation, their need. A wise child asks with genuine intellectual curiosity, what is the meaning of the statutes and laws that God has commanded? The active participant, as this person is, represents the best and wisest in us, understanding the urgency of commitment, love, wonder, and delving deeply into the experience. This person explores not only the words, the symbols, and foods, but uses the values of the Seder to shape daily life. Our hope for liberation depends on encouraging these qualities. When we actively seek justice, beauty, and truth, and only then do we become fully free. The wicked child is intentionally vague when she or he haughtily asks, "What is this service to you?" The one who passively observes the Seder and scoffs at the efforts of others displays perhaps the worst in us. For this person, the Seder has no meaning. This passivity would have kept us in Egypt, enslaved by apathy and indifference. One might ask, why is the wicked child number 2, the second on the list? Perhaps he should or she should have been relegated to last. But since the wicked child is still engaged in asking questions, albeit with a flippant attitude, she or he is still connected on some level. With the right educational approach and love, a wicked child could easily be turned into a wise one. The simple child asks plainly, "Vos is dos?" What is this? The shy and those enclosed in their own private worlds of simple questions need us for support and encouragement. We can show how to ask, how to learn, and how to act. The simple ignorance threatens our peace, freedom, and security. Finally, the 4th child is the one who does not know even how to ask the question. Those who are too young will sit puzzled by our efforts here tonight. Our enthusiasm and joy can show them the importance of what we do here at the Seder. On page 9, another number 4. Originally there were 3 questions asked because in certain jurisdictions there weren't such things as dipping and reclining and so forth. So it became 4 questions, and when we were in school, our rabbis would say, "I have a good tshuva if you have a good shaila. I have a good answer if you have a good question." So look with me, won't you, on page 9. Nobel Prize-winning physicist Isidore Isaac Rabi's mother did not ask him, "What did you learn in school today?" She asked him, "Did you ask a good question today?" Questioning is a sign of freedom. So we begin with questions. To ritualize only one answer would be to deny that there can be many, often conflicting answers. To think that life is only black or white, or wine and maror, bitter or sweet, or even that the cup is half empty or half full, is to enslave ourselves to simplicity. Each of us feels the challenge to search for our own answers. The ability to question is only the first stage of freedom. The search for answers is the next. Can we fulfill the promise of the Exodus in our own lives if we do not search for our own answers? Does every question even have an answer? Is the ability to function without having all the answers one more stage of liberation? Can we be enslaved to an obsessive search for an answer? Our people have lived all over this earth. Wherever we've gone, wherever we go, we ask questions. These are some of the most famous questions in another pattern of tonight's quartets of four. Ma nishtana halayla hazeh? Why is this night different from all other nights? We just have to be alive today and in this precarious situation in which we find ourselves to know that that is a fifth question, if it were. Ma nishtana will be found in the Hebrew on the bottom of page 9, or you may prefer to sing along on page 10 with the transliteration. Ma nishtana halayla hazeh mikol halelot mikol halelot shebechol halelot anu ochelin hametz umatzah chametz umatzah halayla zeh kulo matzah halayla zeh kulo matzah. Louder. Shebechol halelot anu ochlin she'ar yerakot halayla zeh maror halayla zeh maror shebechol halelot en anu matbilin afilu pam echat halayla zeh shetefei amim halayla zeh shetefei amim שבכל הלילות אנו אוכלים בין יושבין ובין מסובין הלילה זה כולנו מסובין הלילה זה כולנו מסובין. Why is this night different from all other nights? On all other nights, we eat both leavened and unleavened bread. Why on this night do we eat only unleavened bread? On all other nights, we may eat all kinds of herbs. Why on this night do we eat especially bitter herbs? On all other nights, we do not usually dip our food in anything at all. Why on this night do we dip food twice? On all other nights, we eat either simply or in festivity. Why on this night do we celebrate with such special festivity? These are good questions, says the text on page 10. In order to answer them properly, we must first tell you the following story. And you can read along and pass this reading to your guest at your Seder table. 4,000 years ago, our forefather Jacob was a wanderer, owning flocks and many tents. In a time of famine, he went down to Egypt and settled there with his family. One of his sons, Joseph, was already the viceroy, the prime minister. Pharaoh, king of Egypt, loved Joseph and gave all his family the good land of Goshen to live. And the children of Jacob, later named Israel, prospered there for many generations. But after a time, there arose a new king over Egypt who feared the Israelites because they were different. And he said to his people, "Look how rich and how powerful these children of Israel. If war comes, they may join themselves to our enemies and fight against us." This unfortunate fear has reappeared many times throughout our long, long history. Therefore, Pharaoh made slaves of our ancestors and set over them taskmasters to afflict them with their burdens. He tried to subdue them by making them gather straw to make bricks so that they could build cities for him upon the plain. He tried to reduce their numbers by casting their male children into the river, and the lives of our ancestors became bitter with pain. But one Jewish mother, trying to save her son, placed him in the river in a little boat of reeds, trusting in the river's current rather than Pharaoh's cruelty, and the great story of Moses began. It goes on to tell of how Pharaoh's daughter found and loved the child and took him for her own, and that without knowing, even hired Moses' own mother to be his nurse. Moses grew up and became determined to free his people from bondage. Once, while alone in the desert, he had a strange and almost marvelous experience with a burning bush. This experience taught him that being and becoming is the very purpose of life. Liberation became his mission. The ancient story tells us of how Moses went repeatedly to the Pharaoh, asking that the Egyptians let the Jews go. But Pharaoh would not. His heart hardened more each time Moses asked him. But Moses feared not. His compassion and pride made him persistent. And then the legend says, came the plagues, one by one more, descending upon Egypt. For each now, as we recite them, we diminish the wine in our cups to give expression to our sorrow for the pain and loss with each plague extracted of other human beings, even our ancient oppressors. On page 12, from Exodus 8, verse 1, and the Eternal spoke unto Moses, saying, go unto Pharaoh and say to him, the Eternal says, let my people go, that they may serve me. Pharaoh was unwilling to release his labor supply. Pharaoh thought himself a god. He believed he could do whatever he wanted with the individuals or even entire peoples. He needed to learn the difficult lesson that there exists a source of power beyond oneself. A series of signs appeared, transformations of the physical world the Egyptians had come to take for granted. Some of these signs altered the natural realm. Others shifted social interactions. Our biblical text and ancient rabbis expressed these signs as though they had occurred on a plane beyond human involvement. Today, we might understand that we need to take an active role in the world we encounter in our own transformation. In either case, scientific or otherwise, whether affected by humans, divine, or in a combination of both, our redemption could not take place without a struggle. Due to that struggle and the resultant loss of life, we take drops from our full cups of wine. This then symbolizes the diminution of our joy. We remember also those who have died in their struggle for freedom. Our joy at this holiday is diminished because of their sacrifice. These, therefore, are the 10 signs the Holy One brought upon Egypt. And as we do so, we can take a finger or a kitchen utensil and dip it in the wine and place it in a plate next to us, remove from our cups as we weigh our hearts and recite each action against the Egyptians. Each plague occurred in succession to make the others perhaps possible one explanation. Now, I really miss the kids at this point because I have all my audiovisual aids for all the 10 plagues and no one but me to play with them. I don't know how this rubber chicken got here, but it was in the pack from last year, so I'll return it to Betsy when I can. As we dip our fingers, we recite, and you can repeat in the English or the Hebrew. Dam, tzvardea, kinim, arov, dever, shchin, barad, arbe, choshech, makat, behorot. It's the only wild beast I have. Except for the jumping frog. Oh, he works this year. That's very good. Next year, kids, I promise, I'll have you come up, as we did in years past, to act out with physical specimen all these plagues, especially Mr. Gooey Hand, who has seen more hands than Purex and Purell can handle. In the middle of page 13, then, friends, Dayenu. It would have been enough. What does this mean, Dayenu? It would have been enough. Surely no one of these would indeed have been enough for us. Dayenu means to celebrate each step toward freedom as if it were enough, then to start out on the next step. Dayenu means that if we reject each step because it is not the whole liberation, we will never be able to achieve the whole liberation. Dayenu means to sing each verse as if it were the whole song, and then sing the next verse. Ilu ilu hotzianu mi Mitzrayim, hotzianu mi Mitzrayim, dayenu, 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 dayenu. Ilu natan lanu et ha-Shabbat, natan lanu et ha-Shabbat, dayenu, 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 dayenu. Ilu natan lanu et ha-Torah, natan lanu et ha-Torah, dayenu, 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 dayenu. Ilu hichnisanu le'eretz Yisrael, hichnisanu le'eretz Yisrael, dayenu, 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 dayenu. On page 14, we come to the three symbols of Passover, the traditional three. Page 14, Rabban Gamliel used to say, whoever has not explained the three symbols of Passover at the Seder has not fulfilled his or her obligations. And they are the Pesach offering, the matzah, umaror, and the bitter herb. Join me on page 15. What is the meaning of the Pesach, the Paschal Lamb? The shank bone represents the mighty arm of God that convinced the Egyptians to free the slaves. The Paschal Lamb was used as a special sacrifice, in the days of the ancient temple in Jerusalem. Because the omnipresent passed over our fathers' houses in Egypt, as it is said, you shall say it is a Passover offering to the Eternal, because he passed over the houses of the children of Israel in Egypt when he struck the Egyptians with a plague, and he saved our houses. And the people bowed and prostrated themselves. What is the meaning of the matzah? We eat matzah on Passover both because it is commanded in the Torah by God, quote, 7 days shall you eat unleavened bread, unquote, and also because it symbolizes the bread of our ancestors, which did not have time to become leavened before they fled Egypt. Quote, thus it is said, they baked matzah cakes from the dough they had brought out of Egypt, because it was not leavened. For they had been driven out of Egypt and could not delay, and they also had not prepared any other provisions, unquote. What is the meaning of the maror? The maror is a symbol of the bitter lives of our ancestors who were slaves in Egypt and who had worked very hard as builders and as field workers. Quote, the Egyptians embittered our fathers' lives in Egypt, as it is said. They made their lives bitter with hard service, with mortar and with bricks, and with all manner of service in the field. All their service which they had made them serve with rigor. Our rabbis taught that each generation should experience the Exodus anew, bechol dor vador, within each generation and the generation that follows. In each and every generation, an individual should look upon him or herself as if he or she had left Egypt. As we turn to page 16, we come to the second cup of 4, the cup of redemption. With the second cup of wine, we recall the second promise, the second stage of our liberation. the actual rescue from slavery. But before we drink, why us? Why the Jewish people? Our numbers amount to little more than a statistical error in the census of larger countries. Why do we play such an active role in the world? Ask the question. Perhaps we can find an answer in the question we ask in the stories we tell tonight. Who are the people struggling for freedom in our time? We need to count ourselves among them. What have I done this past year? Personal question. To increase freedom. In their honor and in the honor of all peoples of the world who have joined in the struggle for peace, for freedom, and to make the world a better place in which we live, we drink the second cup of wine. The second promise states, I will deliver you from their bondage. So we raise our second cup of wine and we sing together. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Praised are you, the eternal our God, sovereign of the universe, who creates the fruit of the vine. And now on page 17, if you're following in our JCC Haggadah, all wash their hands because our meal is about to start. After we wash our hands, the following blessing is recited. So let's go back where we began, but this time with the benediction. Nice E-flat major chord. We recite, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddeshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al netilat yadayim. Blessed are you, the eternal, our God, sovereign of the universe, who has sanctified us with the commandment and commanded us concerning the laws of hand washing. And now we break the first top matzah and the remaining piece of the second matzah and distribute each person's portion to them directly, of course using good judgment in this time of crisis. Assuming that you have done so, we recite the following blessings. Won't you say them with me? Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Praised are you, blessed are you, the eternal our God, sovereign of the universe, who brings forth bread from the earth. And then we add a second benediction. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddeshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu al achilat matzah. Blessed are you, the eternal our God, sovereign of the universe, who has sanctified us with commandments and commanded us to eat the unleavened bread. Friends, won't you turn with me to page 18? Maror, bitter herbs. Maror is a bitter herb, usually fresh ground horseradish. Haroset is a smooth mixture of various chopped fruits, which could include apples and nuts, as well as wine and spices. The maror reminds us of the bitter fate of the slaves in Egypt, and the haroset, the mortar or clay out of which Israelites made bricks for Pharaoh. These, of course, in the traditional sense. The pattern of our celebration is the mixture of the bitter and the sweet, sadness and joy, the tales of shame that end in praise. The combination of the bitter and sweet remind us once again that out of all bad can come good. What a timely message. So we're going to place some maror and some haroset on a small piece of matzah. This ritual is referred to in the four questions when we ask, why on this night do we dip twice? First with the karpas and salt water, and now with the bitter and the sweet. Let's recite together, middle of page 18. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu, al achilat maror. Blessed are you, eternal God, sovereign of the universe, who has sanctified us with commandments and commanded us to eat bitter herbs. And when we see the tragedies of our own time, we sweeten this bitter taste with thought of liberation that is yet to come. Okay. On the bottom of H18, that is, the korech. Make a sandwich of matzah and maror, this time unsweetened.